Hey, welcome back. It's Infinity. So we're going to be going over the Neutrino exploit kit. Very basic. This first part of the series is just going to be nothing more than just going over what we're looking at when we're looking at this. So as it says here with Malwarebytes, it says the Neutrino exploit kit is a malicious toolkit which can be used by attackers who are not experts on computer security. Threat actors have zero coding experience and still use exploit kits like Neutrino to conduct their illegal activities. So it's a really easy way. There's this kind of evolved into malware as a service. This was developed back in, I want to say it was 2016. Can look back at the whole purpose of why we're doing this is malware traffic analysis. Can look at this and go back to the very first one that was in 2013. And if you look, you see 2013, June 18th, Neutrino kit. So what we're going to be doing with this is we're going to be doing all the research and understanding, because these IOCs, indicators of compromise, we have to understand how they all occurred and what the linkages are, because when these files are created, the domains that are reached out to, we want to get a good idea of everything that happens and how it happens throughout this process of whether it's a jar file or an exe, an executable that's being deployed. We have to understand how and when in the chain of the entire chain that it's being deployed. So the importance of this, of starting up what we're looking at, is being able to get the idea before we actually go in and do static and dynamic analysis. Because understanding what you're looking at before can give you a really good idea, because then you can bring that idea back as you keep on revisiting. So it compromises the site, uses a GET request, it's calling to an HTTP, and it has neutrino.php that is being deployed through an iframe. So iframes are quite vulnerable. That's typically something you look at. They're using the tool Fiddler, which is a great tool and able to see all of that. So let's just say, go through it. So the exploit kit, sometimes referred to as an exploit pack, are toolkits to automate the exploitation of a client-side vulnerability, often targeting browsers and applications. So that's what we want to look at, is browser and applications. The importance of understanding that is knowing the source and data sources that are going to be flowing through. Once you understand exactly what the data source is and how you can get that telemetry and that data that's going to be going across, you can better and easier understand where you're able to spot those problems, because on a big environment, you're going to have your baselining and you're going to have how you actually look at the environment. And when data flows across, if there's so much data, you have billions of packets that are going across per day, you're not going to be able to actually understand what is an abnormality. So understanding what is standard and knowing what are the data sources that are typically going to be malicious, that is going to help you out tremendously to able to understand. So it says, often targeting browsers and applications that a website can invoke through the browser, known as exploit targets, have been vulnerabilities in Adobe Reader, Java runtime environments, and Adobe Flash Player. So those are the type of applications that it is compromising based on their vulnerabilities. So you have Adobe Reader, Adobe Flash Player, and Java runtime environment. So those are what we should be looking at. Neutrino began targeting CV 2012. So a great thing to do when you're doing your research is to just look this up. And if you want to do more than just this, you can do this and GitHub POC. So looking up GitHub, that's going to be one of the big things that you're going to be able to actually understand what's happening. So let's just confirm that it's the exact same one. It is, because sometimes they'll give you that's like a number off or something like that, and then you'll be looking at the wrong one. Looking at this, CVE, it's nothing more than an applet. So this applet code, drive by class, archive, exploit jar, and that goes back to that jar file that we saw earlier. So this exploit jar file is what is being compromised. And then it's great. You can also check VirusTotal is a great resource that can show you. Just because it says 38 out of 66 doesn't inherently mean it's good or bad. You have to do a lot of research and understanding what it's correlated with. That's the importance of using VirusTotal, is you can understand the malware vendors and who are actually broadcasting this as bad. Because you can see that even Malwarebytes it says undetected. It doesn't mean that it's good or bad. It just means that the software that inherently is looking at it can't detect it, because they all use different types of detecting categorizations. So with this, because even though it says Malwarebytes, that's who wrote it. Malwarebyte Labs wrote it over here. So we have the 3 different CVEs. So you have 2012, 2013, and 2013, all exploiting the vulnerabilities in the Java runtime environment. JRE component, it was marketed as a simple to use kit with a nicely user-friendly control panel. So that app, there's been a lot of issues in the past with the Java runtime environment, and just understanding that having an application on top of a web application, it becomes pretty cumbersome. So common infection methods. The Neutrino toolkit compromises systems by targeting various vendor vulnerabilities on the victim machine. Campaigns targeting WordPress has been observed using dynamic iframe injections. So this is what I talked about a little bit ago. Dynamic iframe injections are pretty brutal. The goal of the campaign was to fully compromise the site, which includes adding a web shell, remote access, RAT, or backdoor, harvesting credentials, and finally injecting an iframe. So if we see, it says the goal of the campaign was to fully compromise the site. So it starts with an iframe, which includes a web shell, harvesting your credentials, so an info stealer, and then finally injecting an iframe that loads a Neutrino landing page. The iframe is injected into the compromised site immediately using the body tag, which resembles the recent Angler samples. Threat actors want to redirect victims to their payload, which includes ransomware. So it actually sends you somewhere else through the iframe, which is then going to inject ransomware based on you downloading something from that. So let's see if I can. Remediations, Malwarebytes anti-exploit, stop Neutrino EK, while Malwarebytes anti-malware already detects known drop binaries. Boom, boom, boom. Aftermath, successful exploitation of a victim's system berries can lead to encrypted executable downloads. The binary is decrypted and begins peaking immediately, which can lead to a crypto wall. So there are many different factors that happen once you actually get this malware. It spreads quite rapidly and able to do a lot of different things overall. So going back to this, let's see if in images, sometimes in the images, the great thing is some other people talk about, let's just go through, they will have some of this. So this is Neutrino. So it says browser access a malicious advertisement. Browser is redirected to a landing page hosted the Neutrino exploit kit. So you'll go to a website, a watering hole of that sort. Neutrino exploit kit checks for presence of certain security tools. So then if these security tools are detected, then the attack stops. And then if there's no security tools are found in the user's system, the attack proceeds. I would like to see what it is reading off of, because it can look at the environment and see. So here's a breakdown of how the CVE detects the existence of certain files in the user. Program files, Internet Explorer, boom. Microsoft XML has a function defined as load XML string. The string can be following format. The URL can be a string which represents res protocol resources. The format is as followed. The 0-day vulnerabilities exist in the following version resources. The Mishtum HTML module has instructions of the above function to process the res protocol. If the S file does not exist, the load library exw will fail and load that error code. So this is a Windows API, they'll load that error code. However, the file is found to exist, the function will get the resource located in the S file. The resource is not a valid DTD file, thus the XML parser run process the resource as a DTD file and return to the error code. So that's what this string all means. And all right, so that's the overall high level of what it looks like. Let's see if this one. Let me check if this is Neutrino, because it's very closely linked, but I don't think that this is Neutrino. Neutrino. Small data set using Mrs. Mini high profile EKs, Angler, Nuclear, Neutrino, Rig, Fiesta. Okay, this doesn't look like it's has to do with Neutrino. But seeing something like this helps out tremendously, being able to understand how like the victim gets a vulnerable browser, compromised browser, because being able to have like your proper STIG on your environment to know the exact type of browser that you're going to be having to all of your different hosts is super important. You can stop that by having a server that has all of the proper versions that have been tested and ran in a development environment. And then with that, you're able to push that out to your environment from there. So then that browser creates a watering hole of some effect, and then it's going to push you out to that compromised web page. And then there's going to be many different redirects that happen very quick. That's going to go to that landing page, and then it's going to detect exactly what you have. And then that vulnerable plugin is going to be like, I need an update of some sort. And then it's going to click, you're going to click that update, and then the payload, and then there's the steps. But having an understanding the entire exploit chain helps out tremendously when it goes to actually understanding how the Neutrino malware, or just any malware in general, is going to be executing. That's quite interesting. I would so fingerprints your machine, understanding what type of version of Flash you have, and then it's going to use that Flash exploit based on that. So this is a really good example of what we're looking at when it comes to this. So we have the victim compromised website that you're going to visit, and then from there you can see that it goes to HTML code. That JavaScript is going to activate functions in the background that are going to load that iframe, and that you see the primary DNS server. It's going to go back and forth, and the name server authoritative for DGA, and then that's going to send it back, and then that's going to go to that compromised web server. From there, the exploit kit backend is going to negotiate with the name server and then say that it is the one that is available. And then you're going to land on that landing page. It's going to identify what version of Flash. It could possibly say that you need an update of some regard. And then from that point, it's going to inject itself either in the background, or you are going to click it. And then at that point, then it's going to execute the malware, which could then result in ransomware or some other beaconing that they're able to use with the Neutrino kit. So really good stuff, and able to do the research. So this is part one of everything. Obviously, over time, as we go through all these malware traffic analysis, I'm going to get more refined with my process of how I'm doing this. But as of right now, that's the high level of what we're looking at and able to do our proper research. Next, we'll use what we have from malware traffic analysis to look at the actual Wireshark and understand what is happening throughout the process. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe.